Hello and welcome back. A hot minute since I've sat down and actually talked about books that I've read. It's been a busy summer, but few things. One, my new job is going incredibly well. I'm having the time of my life. It's amazing what a little perspective can do because I'm so much happier. I'm so much healthier, actually, because there was so much stress going on with me 24/7. My entire wedding is basically planned too. So I had like 3 weeks off in between my two jobs, and I got so much stuff done. So very happy about that. But I also wanted to, make this video because I'm trying to capture most of the things that I read in the summer as we're transitioning to fall, which is my favorite and objectively the best time of the year. Let's dive in and talk about mostly the audiobooks. It was mostly audiobooks that I consumed over the last few months. Also, I'm opening, this is not sponsored, but I wouldn't be mad if Poppy did want to sponsor me. This is the cherry limeade version. Just gonna forewarn everyone watching this video, there's a lot of young adult books on this wrap up because I've been trying to prepare for my new role where I kind of recommend things as a teen librarian. It's actually worked out perfectly because for my horror book club, our June pick was a book called You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, and I think it's Kaylin Bayron is her name, and she is a black author who writes like YA thrillers and then dabbles into the horror genre a little bit too. So this follows our main character, which I don't remember her name because this book wasn't my favorite. I'm just gonna be point blank about that. It follows our main character who works at this summer camp that's actually like designed to, how would I describe this? It's like a full immersion event at a summer camp where you think you are being chased by a murderer, and like you sign up for it, you sign a waiver, all that kind of stuff. That's like the stuff for the total adrenaline junkies and people who love haunted houses. Not me. I don't love slashers either, and this was a slasher with that premise. So overall, I didn't love the book. It definitely did read really quickly. So if you're interested in like getting out of a slump and you want something that's still kind of summery for the end of the season, then I would suggest this book to you. But I felt like a lot of things just tied up and wrapped up super quickly in this book, and this was not something that I'm going to be thinking about and remembering. I ended up not being able to attend the horror book discussion anyway because of a prior conflict that I had. So a little bit bummed about this one, but other than that, I don't have anything else to add. The next book is actually one that I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. This book is called Resball by Byron Graves, which I was deep in the trenches online looking up like underrated like YA books, all these like different YA books, trying to bring like a bunch of different point of views into the library that I'm going to be working at. I specifically thought this book was interesting, not only because we have an indigenous author writing about their perspective, but this story is about basketball, unlike the reservation side of things, and it follows this like nationally recognized reservation team, and I thought that premise was really interesting. I also thought it could be good for like kids who are interested in sports and want to read like fictionalized stories about that. So I gave it a chance, and as a former basketball player, this was actually a great time. Like very well written. I learned a lot about reservations just in general, which is really good knowledge for me to have. But I found the main character, his name was Trey, to be like kind of down to earth. He kind of goes through the typical coming of age hero's journey arc, and it ends in a really satisfying way. Like when I tell you that it was definitely like when I was listening to the audiobook, like you're tuning into like the baseball game or something on the radio like people do sometimes. Like it definitely felt like that. Like I could picture everything really really well, and I just thought it was really fun. So I gave this book like 4 stars, and I would recommend it to people. I'm gonna get it for the library. It's gonna be a good time. Next on the list is not a young adult book, but a book I gave 5 stars and I really loved, and that was Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. This book is horrific in the best way possible. Oh my gosh. The premise of this book is that we're following a like pandemic story. So basically, think back to 2020, where you were at that time when there was hardly any toilet paper to be seen and TikTok was blowing up. Now imagine that in New York City, but centered around hate crimes instead. That's what this book is. It follows an East Asian female protagonist by the name of Cora Zhang, and she witnesses her sister be hate crimed right in front of her. Like pushed, this is not a spoiler, this is like in the very beginning, pushed in front of a train and body splattered levels of horrific. And the story just details like how traumatic it was at that time for East Asian women to not only live in America with all of the hate surrounding the coronavirus, but in New York City where they're like wearing masks, everybody's like in such close quarters. And Korzang is actually a crime scene cleaner, and she gets tied up with the killings of these East Asian women, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. So it's a little mystery. It's a little it's a little mystery, a lot of horror is what I would say. The descriptions in this book are absolutely haunting. There's a lot in this book that I found to be really interesting, especially with our main character. Lots of conversation about like religion and how that's relating to this situation. I just thought it was really fun and interesting. So I would highly recommend. Horror's been hitting this year. This has been the knockout year for horror, in my opinion. Next book is back to the YA genre. I got this book on audio. This is Dear Manny by Nick Stone. It's technically the third book in like the Dear Martin series. I'm not sure. They're more like companion novels. But Dear Martin is about like a kid that writes letters as part of like a project or something else where he writes Martin Luther King Jr. letters. And then there's Dear Justice, which is the second book. And then we're at Dear Manny finally. And I thought this book was really interesting because it's more set in like a collegiate setting, whereas the other two books were more like high school and younger age group focused. But anyways, we're following one of the characters from the previous stories, and this story is where he undergoes a lot of growth and is starting to reconcile with some of his past decisions and taking those decisions moving forward after the death of one of his friends. I'm not going to drop names really because like if you haven't read the previous two books, this one wouldn't make as much sense. But we're following the perspective of a young white man, like understanding his privilege and then also trying to use that privilege for to better like the world, because he's trying to run for class president and he's trying to run on more like of a progressive campaign, trying to figure out like how he can make people care. I still think Dear Martin's my favorite out of it though. Dear Martin's a 5-star read for me. I think it's great. Now we're going to jump into the YA fantasy genre. I finally got around to reading Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Oh my gosh, this book was good. It was action packed, very creative, honestly, and I loved the West African influence that this book has. I was really interested because apparently this is being made into a TV show too, and I'm hoping that that encourages a lot of people to pick up this book and read it. And I know the third book in the series like just came out either this year or last. So I need to get on finishing that. Following our main character Zaylee as she is trying to bring magic back to Orisha, which is the place that they live. And in this world, magic users are called like magi, and they're kind of looked down upon, and there's like a whole hierarchy going on. But like the other perspective we're following is like the prince of the kingdom of the guy who squandered all of that magic then. And there's just a really interesting, like there's interesting threads that kind of bring them together as this quest is happening. I really did enjoy the characters in this. We're following the main character has a brother, and that dynamic's really interesting. And then the prince has a younger sister, and like the sibling dynamics are really interesting. Just all the character dynamics and how they interact with one another kept me wanting to know what would happen. I also think that this book was really well paced, and I'm excited to see like how it bleeds over into the second book. But yeah, this was like peak YA fantasy. Very good. Like I wish more people would read it, honestly. I was just curious enough because like we were doing inventory and this was one of the books that hadn't been checked out in like 5 years, and I'm like, why is no one checking this out? This is actually incredible. So, I'm going to make sure it doesn't leave the library. I'm so excited to talk about the next one. So, if you don't know, I'm actually a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan, but my campaign did get postponed tonight, and that's why I was able to film this video. But I read the cutest YA romance book called Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. And this has a special place in my heart already because, one, it takes place in Ohio, and I grew up in Ohio. So I was like, oh my gosh, a lot of the things that were being said, especially about like the corn, like when you're driving around, hit home. But this was absolutely adorable. It was so good. We're following our main character, I think her name's Riley, and then this boy named Nathan. And Nathan works at Riley's dad's hobby shop, and Riley is sent there to work as like a punishment for like taking the car out when she wasn't supposed to, because she sees like this hobby shop as like the thing that broke her parents apart, basically, because her parents are divorced. So she doesn't really want anything to do with it. She doesn't really interested in nerdy hobbies. Like she's too cool for that, you know? But then chance meeting with Nathan and needing him to do a favor for her brings her into playing D&D with a group of lovable, adorable teenage dudes that just love Monty Python and Riley's dad so much. It captured that feeling of being like young and figuring things out so well and being ambitious. Like Riley was very ambitious and I wanted to support her with all of the love in my heart. This was so much fun and I really loved it. And after I finished Dungeons and Drama, I had to go to the second book in the series, which was Dating and Dragons. And I thought that the two were going to be connected, but there was really only like one small cameo of like the characters in Dungeons and Drama in this book. So in this book, we're following all new characters, but like same location, just different high school, basically. And we're following our main character, Quinn. She's the new girl on the block, and she gets invited to participate in a D&D group that actually like does live streaming, kind of like Critical Role, and they're very serious about it. So they were like not even sure they wanted to bring her into it. It was that kind of vibe. And there's like a strict rule in their group that they're not allowed to like date each other because it could mess up like the chemistry on screen and blah blah blah, you know? But of course, she starts having hard eyes for this guy in the group named Logan, and she's like, "Oh my god, he's a cute farm boy. Like what if he and I hung out outside of D&D?" And that's where the story goes from there. There's also a little bit of Quinn's past that is playing into the story that her new friends don't know about. So it was very cute. I still really enjoyed it, but I did not enjoy it as much as the first book. But I could read like 10 of these books. Like, give me 13 of them right now because they are so much fun. And you can do like endless possibilities with D&D and coming of age stories. This was genius. Christy Boyce, you're doing it right. I actually have the physical book for this one. I read Piranesi by Susanna Clark. And one thing I do wish is, since I read this at the time of transition, I feel like my brain didn't soak up as much as I would have liked. This book just seems like it's going to get better on a reread. Like I've got a few tabs in here, but if you don't know, Piranesi is this like, it's like a lower fantasy, almost like a Greek myth esque feeling book where we're following the main character whose name is Piranesi, and he's going through this like maze area trying to figure out like where he's going, trying to map the different locations and trying to understand. And he gathers information for this guy called like the Other. So we're unraveling this mystery of like what this place is, what's Piranesi's purpose, and there's a lot of complicated things along the way. This book has a gorgeous writing style. Like it's very descriptive. It does feel like you're watching a dream sequence unfold, but it's like a dream sequence that makes sense. Don't worry about it, you know? I do think it was interesting how it wrapped up. I want to go back and reread this book because I feel like the clues and things and foreshadowing will make so much more sense if I go back and read again from start to finish. But I liked this, but I thought I was going to be absolutely destroyed and like love it. So I'm a little bummed about that, but I'm hoping maybe a reread will change my tune just a little bit. Next, I'm going to talk about kind of three books all together, but I read the three young adult books that Andrew Joseph White has published currently, which is Hell Followed With Us, The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, and Compound Fracture. So I gave Hell Follows With Us 3 stars. I gave Spirit Bears Its Teeth like 3.5. And then Compound Fracture was a 5 out of 5 stars. It goes into the category of horror is great this year, and I'm enjoying it so much. Each of these stories have like different like plot lines and things, obviously, but one of the main threads is we are following characters that represent transgender identity and the autistic spectrum as well. And I think that both of those representation pieces are done so nicely because Andrew Joseph White writes from their heart, truthfully, and you can see that there's so much love and care put into these characters. I also think all of the concepts are so interesting, like knockout 10 out of 10, just like the execution for some of them wasn't like my absolute fave, but still very good. Hell Follows With Us is like a post-apocalyptic story, and we're following kind of this trans boy who's trying to figure out like how to survive, but there's a lot of like religious trauma tied to this, and they are like slowly rotting away, but they're kind of like an angel, kind of like a curse. So really interesting stuff. And then in Spirit Bears Its Teeth, we're following a another trans boy who is forced to go to like a prep academy for girls and is trying to be like a good wife, like taught how to be a good wife. And this is in like the Victorian era, so there really wasn't many options for women. And then there's also a little bit of like medium magic and spirituality mixed in. Very interesting. Actually like very graphic from like a surgical procedure type way, which was so well written. And then Compound Fracture, I could go on about this book forever. I consumed it so quickly. It was so good. Our main character Miles is a trans autistic boy, and he's the heart of the story. Makes like a lot of decisions where I'm like, ah, in the best way possible. This story takes place in Appalachia, so there is a lot of things going on there, especially with like the coal mine strikes and riots and things like that. So in this book, we're following Miles as he's kind of coming into his own and navigating like the crazy mean people that live in his town and like are trying to, well, they hurt him, and then he's trying to figure out like how to go about the rest of time with that in mind while protecting his family. Like the story was very family centric, and then also had a lot of themes about like banding together and creating unity. And when I tell you, this had some disgusting horror scenes. I mean it with my full chest. It was incredible. There's one scene, and I won't spoil it, but they're in like a slaughterhouse, and I'm just gonna say the jaw. The jaw was on the floor. You know what I mean? Crazy descriptive, crazy interesting, crazy good. This book, I should say, this book is making me think a lot, and I really appreciate that. Like, I haven't stopped thinking about it since I read it, and I almost want to read it again. Plus, also shout out to Lady the Dog. She's a real one. Next was another YA book that was actually like way more mature than I thought it was going to be, and it was awesome. That was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boyle. My God, this book is so good. I've been sleeping on this book for so long. I didn't know what it was going to be about at all, but it was not what I thought it was. We're following our main character, Donis, who is a grade A baddie. She's awesome, actually. And she is in her senior year on the verge of trying to figure out what comes next when one of her classmates is killed. And then they find out that there are connections to this ongoing, like, drug war with like methamphetamine basically, and then she gets roped into figuring out like how this even started and how this is affecting her community. And it's especially interesting because this is another indigenous story, and I felt like I learned a lot, which I so appreciate, having these different perspectives. This was so interesting, so good, and it kept me engaged from like start to finish. Truthfully, I really enjoyed our main character because she just was who she is with no shame whatsoever. And I think she was like a badass female character without being like, I'm a badass female character. there was some nuance, if you could believe it, you know? But I thought the story was so good. You should go in not knowing much, and you will be delightfully surprised. Next book that I read was a romance book, and this was by one of my favorite romance authors. It's What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I love her. I've read all of her books. She's great. You should go read her books because they are great. Just had to say it. This book had a really fun premise. So we're following our main character, Danica, aka Danny, and she's trying to navigate her life, but she's in her 30s and trying to like cope with a midlife crisis, even though probably not midlife. But so she decides to pack everything up and to move to Amsterdam because she's always wanted to go there. So she gets to Amsterdam, and while she's there, she actually runs into an old friend who used to be the exchange student that lived with her family, and his name is Wouter. And apparently, back in the day, she and Wouter used to be dating, but didn't tell anyone because they didn't want to have it be weird with them living under the same roof and everything. And so it's been like 13 years since they've seen each other. And there's some, old feelings being dredged up, especially with the way things ended, which was not pretty. I enjoyed this book because there was a lot of yearning, a lot of, oh, I don't know. And like the way that Rachel Lynn Solomon described a first love was just heartbreaking. It was so good. Just so much fun. And I want her to write another book already. I've been so excited to talk about this book because this is a serious, like, what the heck did I just read type of book. This book is called Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen. And I read this for my July horror book club, and I had the most fun discussion with my book club members that I've had in a while. It's reality TV meets sapphic undertones, meets Sasquatch, meets cult. Are you intrigued? Doesn't make any sense? No, this book is such a romp of a time that I didn't know what was going on half the time, like in the background and things. But basically, we're following the final four in like this reality TV show that's like The Bachelor. So there's a lot of commentary about reality TV and like, against like personal intentions versus like going on the show for social media fame, all that kind of stuff. Really interesting. They get caught up in this like small town where allegedly a Sasquatch like creature lives. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But no, this book is equally funny as it is like heart wrenching, as it is weird as heck. It was such a fun time. This book, you have to discuss it with other people. Like, if you just read it by yourself, and it doesn't do it justice, you have to read this with people so that you can talk about it because it is so odd. Rolling through. So I read Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Wang, and I loved Natural Beauty. Natural Beauty was a 5 star. However, Immaculate Conception kind of dropped the ball for me. I actually forgot most of the things that happened in the book because of a lack of interest. And this book sounded so interesting, which is why I'm so bummed about it. This book connects like AI art with like your mind and then obsession. We're following our main character Enka in this story, and Enka enrolls at this art school where she faces like a lot of backlash from her family about choosing art as her like main path, and she also kind of has an obsession with one of the other students there named Mathilde, and they start like this friendship and jealousy, rivalry sort of situation. Then added in is this thing called the scaffold, which is basically like AI art where you can connect like two brains together and see each other's dreams, and eventually the two become intertwined. And then there's like a whole other like conspiracy and like organization that's behind the scaffold. So lots of interesting concepts. I do really think that the conversation about creativity and originality was done so well in this book. I do really think that's important, but there was a lot of stuff where I was just like kind of reading through, and it's not something that's going to leave a lasting impact on me, but something I would love to talk about with other people. You know that feeling? Yeah, this one did not hit as much as Natural Beauty, but it. Ooh, cat ran by. That's all I have to say. So next two books I'm gonna only briefly go over because I'm actually making a vlog that has both of these in it where I'm reading some fantasy, but one of the fantasy books is pretty long, so it's going to take me a minute to finish it. But I finished The Dragon Republic and Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. I'll talk more in depth in that video, but all you need to know is R.F. Kuang has continued to deliver. I've given every single one of her books that I've read 5 stars, and this is no different. This book destroyed me, and I loved it in the best way possible. And then Bury Our Bones. Bottom line, I don't think I like vampire stories still. This book's writing was beautiful, but you can only deal with so much blood sucking before it sucks the life out of you. That's all I'm gonna say. Eddie LaRue did Immortality better. Anyways, moving on. 2 more books that we're gonna talk about, and they're both in the YA genre. So the first one we'll jump into is called The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. And I hadn't heard much about this book other than I saw it recommended by someone when I was scrolling through my reels. And this is like a sci-fi dystopian. I wouldn't really say sci-fi, but it's more of like a dystopian, like Handmaid Tale-esque, Giver-esque sort of situation where it's very grounded in reality, where there's like hints that something else could be at play, basically. But in this world, girls at the age of 16 are sent to compete in something called the Grace Year, where all of them get sent away into like the wilderness to survive, and some don't come back, some do. And then if they do come back, they're basically either tossed into the field to work for the rest of their lives or they're married off to a dude, and that's all they're good for, basically. So this story has a lot of commentary about like feminism, breaking the cycle of like abuse and rebellion, and how rebellions kind of simmer for a while, and like it's not like a 1 day change. There has to be change from the ground sprouting up. And I thought a lot of those conversations were really interesting. The first half of this book, I was sacked. I thought it was great. The lead up and the tension was awesome, but I do feel like I didn't love how it ended, and the execution at about like the 70% mark started to falter in my eyes just a little bit. But I still think this book is really good. It's worth giving a try, and it's a fresh slap on the dystopian take of things. And the final book for this specific wrap up is actually one that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and that is Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Rebay. This is a story about a Filipino American boy by the name of Jason, or Jay, and he discovers that his cousin has died tragically in the Philippines, and it's caught up in like the drug war that's kind of going on over there. So he feels like he's not being told the full story and kind of wants to get to the bottom of things. He takes it into his own hands to figure out what's like been going on, what secrets are being kept from him, and what he can do knowing all of this information about his cousin. And he especially feels guilty because he and his cousin used to be really close. They used to exchange letters all the time. But Jason stopped writing him. And a few months later, June, his cousin, had died. So there's a lot of personal motivation in this story, as well as themes of like social change, social justice. And I would say if you've read Firekeeper's Daughter, I think this would be a good comparison, or vice versa. If you've read this, then you should go read Firekeeper's Daughter. I thought both of them were really interesting. And this book specifically had such like the dialogue was really great in this book. For whatever reason, it felt very real, like when 2 teens were talking to each other, or like an elder and Jason were talking with each other. There was just a lot of really great things about this book in particular, and I would be so curious to read more by this author. Okay, that was a lot of books to get through. It's going to be a lot of books on screen because it was a lot of audiobooks as I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off this past summer. Anyways, you have something to look forward to because I'm currently making a fantasy blog, and I don't know when that's going to come out. It depends on how long it takes me to read this book, and I might include a 4th book in it, so we'll see. But if you made it to the end of the video, thank you for spending some time with me today. And if you have any YA book recommendations, I would love to hear them in the comments below. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, and I also have a Webtoons comic by the name of Tales of Grandeur. So if you're interested in that, or you have a friend that's interested, please spread the word. But I will see you in the next video. Bye!